Welcome, welcome, welcome to another episode of Truth Talks TV. Thank you so much for joining us. We have an amazing guest. His name is Anthony Wilson, and he's here to share his story and his experience when he was wrongly accused. Now he's bringing change, and he's the bridge between the law and police. So let's just celebrate this man who's on here. Like, we don't have too many men out here that's being a voice in the community and just bringing change. He's a wonderful example, and we're so excited to have him. Thank you for joining us for Truth Talks TV.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Truth Talks TV. We are here with our very special guest, Mr. Anthony. Thank you so much for joining us. We are so excited to dig into your journey. Can you share with those that are joining us more about your story and let us learn a little bit more about your leadership and what you're doing in the community?
Yes, tell us.
All right. So I'm gonna go back to where it all began. So in 1991, I was charged and convicted of first-degree murder for someone I didn't know, for a crime I didn't commit. And when I went into the Maryland Penitentiary, I started learning the law and working on my case, as they would say, and just trying to prove my innocence. And so during that time, I was financially able to obtain attorneys throughout the state of Maryland. So the go forward and come back is I did 22 years.
Wow.
Through those years, I did have paid attorneys in all my appeals and things of that nature, and nothing happened. Everything was denied. So the whole up until 2009, everything was denied. And so I was writing the Prince George County Police Department and trying to obtain what they call an MPIA. So MPIA stands for Maryland Public Information Act, where we request documents that are entitled to us based on investigations or anything that may be readily available for the public. When I wrote to them and I did my MPI motion, they kept responding back saying that my evidence in my case was destroyed. Now, I was convicted in 91. My first MPIA was like 93, I think 92, 93. And the letter I got back was saying that my evidence was destroyed. So I'm trying to figure out, how is my evidence destroyed if I just was convicted? So in prison, they got something called jailhouse lawyer. I don't know if y'all ever heard of the term, right? Okay, yeah. So all the jailhouse lawyers, hey, youngin, they ain't supposed to do that, because remember, I'm a young guy. I went in when I was 19, so I'm like 20, 21. They're like, youngin, man, they doing something with your something going on with your case. So for years, I always did a request for my police files, and they always sent me a letter saying, we reviewed the storage room, we looked for it in our department, it doesn't exist. That's what they told me. I have letters that it doesn't exist. So what happened was that I kept working on my case, lawyers were working on my case, everything was getting denied. I did some pro se stuff. If anybody don't know what pro se mean, I did it on my own, you know. And so one day I was looking through some of my reports or something that I had got from one of my attorneys, and I looked at it, and it was talking about some notes and fingerprints, and everything that was there, it said it didn't match me. So when I read it, I read it, and I thought I was saying things. I said, let me put this down and read it again. And it was saying fingerprints obtained from weapon tested against the known suspect, defendant Wilson, came back with negative results. So I'm sitting there saying, we never knew this. If they got evidence that is excluding me, from this crime. Why didn't we know this? So I wrote my attorney at the time. He's a very prominent attorney in PG County named Robert Bonsid. And so he was my trial attorney at the time. And he had said, Tony, we never had this. And this would have definitely been what they call Brady. I don't know if y'all know what Brady, y'all heard what Brady evidence is?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. All right. Somebody look, all I'm gonna say, Queenie, somebody knows a little more than we know.
Yeah.
So me and Mr. Barnes had talked about that being Brady. So I end up hiring a private investigator. And is it okay if I say their names? Because because I usually, when I do interviews, I usually give them a shout out because those are the ones that was instrumental in my release, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind. I don't think it's a
so
problem.
Yeah, I had to give them a shout out because they was part of my freedom.
Right.
So and it is public that they was in my case. She was in the courtroom with me.
Knowledge, yeah.
So anything so this is what I know because I'm in the legal field now. Anything that's public knowledge, you can get it.
Yes.
Right.
About it. So her name was Sharon Weidenfeld. And so I hired her, and unbeholden me, one day they called me and they tell me I had legal mail. I get my legal mail. Guess what it is?
Tell us.
Everything they told me was destroyed in 1993 was in a big FedEx envelope from Sharon, the investigator. You should, hey Queenie, you shaking your head? I'm shaking my head this way because when I opened that up, I said, "This is what they told me didn't exist for all these years." And now, so this was 2006 when I hired her.
My Lord.
I received the information in 2007, and I started reading. So remember, I've been in almost like 17 years at the time. So I was very, very knowledgeable about the law. I could interpret the law. I was even teaching law classes. I was teaching constitutionality classes. And so when I started reading, and I'm saying, so it's evidence that's pointing to somebody else. They had another suspect that they was talking about all this. So what I want to revert back to real quick, then come back forward is that I was never a suspect in this murder. So that's what a lot of people didn't know. I was never picked up on the murder that I was charged with, which nobody ever knew. I was picked up on a robbery charge, never the murder. The murder got put on me when I didn't help a detective with the case, but nobody knew that. Everybody said, "Yeah, I was never a suspect in the murder at all until I was down to the county jail." And so I end up reading everything. It was what they call 5 pieces of Brady. I had 5 pieces of Brady material. I did my motion. It went in front of the best judge I could say in PG County, Melanie Shaw Jeter.
Yes.
That and me and her, and so she's a part of the story where she saw what it was, and her and I, we seen each other before she went to the Court of Special Appeals, and she was definitely like, she said, I seen what it was. I said, thank you. And so I filed my motion. So I brought my motion for y'all today. So this is the motion I filed.
Wow.
It's called I did a motion for new trial based on newly discovered evidence. Prosecutor failure to disclose exculpatory Brady material.
Right.
So I know, look, Queenie, we know somebody may know a little bit, but I'm gonna explain it anyway for those who don't know.
Don't do me like that.
Feel free to explain.
So when I used to teach the constitutionality classes in the prison, I used to always tell them exculpatory means to exclude. Exculpatory. When you have inculpatory evidence, it means it includes you as one of the suspects in a crime. So that's how I explain it. So in this motion, I basically explained to them that on when I was being tried, I said on July 21st during my trial, a crime scene investigator, I'm not going to say his name, but he testified on direct examination that he received a tainted eyeglass lens under the vehicle, a telephone paging device, and a paper note provided to him by a television reporter. All right. The reason I put that in it because that's very important. The note that he received gave a description of the suspect from a passing motorist who saw the suspect committing the crime. The note that we got that we never knew about at my trial didn't describe me. It described somebody totally different than me, and it didn't coincide or coincide with the only witness that they presented against me. So I said that. So I did the first request. So I told them that I made a request in 1992 where they said that they didn't have the evidence, right? This was in 1992. I said I made a second request. I said they never responded. I filed my post-conviction. I said the defendant made a third request for a motion to compel, filed in 1997. The court denied that request. I said the defendant throughout the years working institutional job saved enough money to hire a private investigator to obtain his discovery material related to the 1991 murder investigation. So when I used to explain to guys in the prison what discovery is what the crime scene investigators or the detectives discovered during the investigation, meaning witnesses, ballistics, medical examiner, those things. So I make it easy for them to understand why they call it discovery material, right? Because it's what was discovered. I said the private investigator hired by the defendant obtained the investigation files almost 17 years later. Included in those files was a copy of the paper note describing the suspect involved in the shooting that was provided to detectives by the television reporters. The file also included an autopsy report that included a statement saying there were possibly two suspects, which we never knew. Wow. Right? And so that was I put that in there, and there's some other stuff I put in here that talked about why those pieces of evidence was important in my case. Judge Jeter, the Honorable Judge Jeter, granted the motion hearing, and I was in front of one of the hardest nosed prosecutors in PG County, and I know somebody gonna know when I say her name. Now her and I are very now her and I are close now, but Miss Alana P. Gales. Ooh, okay. You know. But look, me and Alana now, yes, and so she looked at the evidence and she knew what was going on. It was 5 pieces. I only talked about 2, but it was 5 other pieces of evidence, 3 other pieces of evidence that pointed to somebody else. And so what I did was I was ready to argue my case. And so let me tell y'all something that was so important, right? The prosecutor that was in the courtroom when I first went for my first hearing, he told Judge Jeter, he said, Your Honor, we don't have the trial transcripts in this case because it's a very old case. I didn't go to my first hearing until August of 2008. And so I asked Judge Jeter, I said, is it all right if I give him my transcripts that I have? He can have them. So Judge Jeter said, well, your problem is solved. There you go. The defendant's giving you his copy. Because I already had like 3 copies of my trial transcripts.
I know that's right.
Smart.
You go win this one.
Right.
Yeah, it is.
But the reason why I was so happy to give him mine because my transcript was mocked up with all the errors that occurred in the case. So when if they read through it, they would see how the one witness lied, the evidence, all that other stuff. And so, but this is what I didn't see at the time, right? It's like the aftermath. He told Judge Jeter that he didn't have the transcripts. However, I asked Judge Jeter, could I talk to the prosecutor privately? And she said, sure. Would you mind talking to him? He said, no problem. So they took me back in the jury room. And the first thing I said to him, I'm innocent. I have the evidence now to prove it. This is what he said to me. He said, yeah, I know you said you was innocent when you told Judge Johnson that during your sentencing hearing. Did you catch that?
Wow.
How can he say he didn't have my trial transcript, but he knew I told Judge Johnson that I was innocent during my sentencing hearing? I didn't catch it at the time. Until later on, I was like, he just lied to the judge.
Completely.
And so we had to keep going back and forth to court. He kept saying he wasn't ready. He said he had to check and make sure the evidence that they withheld was never used at my trial. So I come to court, and the public defender they had for me, because remember I did this motion pro se. This was a pro se motion I did, and she said they offered you life suspend over 30 years. So I was like, I don't want to take that. I want to fight. She said, well, I took it for you already because you had life with no parole, right? What? So the investigator was in the courtroom. So I said, can I speak to Sharon? So Sharon said, Tony, look, just take the deal because you already got almost 20 years in, and then we can work on proving your innocence when you come home. So I said, okay. So I said, all right, we can take the deal. So the deal wasn't that I was still saying I'm guilty enough, and the deal was that they wanted me to withdraw this motion right here. They wanted me to withdraw this motion with prejudice. And so with prejudice mean I can never bring this motion back up again.
No.
Right? So we did that, and they gave me the deal. All right. So now we're gonna speed up now. So I finally come home. No thought, no inkling ever crossed my mind to be where I'm at right now as a paralegal investigator.
Right.
When I was going to open up a barbershop for little kids called Baby Boys, Baby Girls, for little kids 12 and that was I'm business. I was going to start getting back into my real estate. I was getting into the car. That's my thing is when I get home, I'm getting into what I know.
Yeah,
that's right.
A young man called me one day and was like, hey, your name Tony Wolf? I was like, yeah, what's going on? He's like, man, somebody told me that, you got yourself out of prison. I was like, I said, well, first of all, I give God the glory for that.
Yes.
But then, God comes first before everything. So I said, but yeah, what's going on? He's like, man, I need your help. And so I said, okay. I said, so I never did nobody case since I was home, and I was like, I said, all right. I said, send me your case. I said, send me your transcript. He said, okay, I took a guilty plea. So his transcripts wasn't nothing but like 30 something pages. So I said, okay. I said, tell your people to give me 250, right? So I'm gonna tell you why I came up with the name The Great Injustice because of what happened to me.
Yeah.
Now I see it happens to all the Myray cases that I have worked on throughout my time. I've been home 10 years now. So all the cases I've been working on the last 10 years. So I'm reading this young man's case, and to tell you what it is, he's a Spanish guy. This little Spanish kid had a third grade education. He didn't speak no English. Him and some of his buddies were gang members, and they went out on a night trying to rob people and carjack and all these things. But what was so significant about this was that when he took the plea, the lawyer explained to the judge all these things that would not qualify him to understand any right that they was going to actually understand. He's from El Salvador. He dropped out when he was in the third grade. He cannot speak English that well. He can't read and write. But then when the judge say, do you understand that you have a right to have a jury trial and that you can bring witnesses on your behalf? See, that's all.
Right. They say yes to everything.
Yeah, and so I'm sitting there saying, not only is this a judicial misconduct on part of a judge, but we got ineffective of counsel because the counsel should have at least asked for an evaluation of this young man. The judge should have asked for an interpreter to say, hey, let's get this young man to see does he understand anything that's being said? Because
Right.
you got us grown adults don't really understand our rights.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
And we know English, right?
Exactly. And
right,
so
exactly.
so I did the motion for him. And when I did it, his family called me and they was like, they want to know who you are because they're trying to figure out who did this motion. So now they mad at me because now I'm trying to correct what they did wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So I was in the courtroom. So after that, I started getting in people's cases. So guys started calling me, hey man, look, I got a case, this and that. So I started helping guys out. And I remember I was in the courtroom and one of the attorneys, and I talked to him about a month ago. I ran into him in the courtroom. His name is Christopher Griffin. And I ran into him and I said, Chris, I said, you know, you're the reason why I got my certification as a paralegal. He said, what you mean? I said, I was in a hearing with you with one of the clients that I knew, and they was telling you about me, and you saw some of my work, and you was like, man, you know your stuff, but you need to get your papers. Mm-hmm. So when Chris told me that, I didn't know what he talking about when he said you need to get your papers, but he was telling me you need to go get certified as a paralegal so you can do this legitimately, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So what I did, and I told him, because I'm gonna tell you about my documentary that I just finished. Man, I was telling Chris that he's in my documentary, so he's waiting to see that. He said, man, I can't wait to see it. So I end up going to Howard University. They had their first time paralegal certification course. It was it was what they call a when it's the first time thing they do.
Inaugural?
No, the project, when they do a project, it's when they first doing something to see if it'll work. To see
a beta test. Beta.
Yes, it was like one of those.
Mm-hmm.
So in order for you to get into that class, they was only accepting 40 students. And they said in order to get into that class, Howard is extinguished. So they said you had to do an essay. So I did an essay on my wrongful conviction.
Yes.
So the dean at the time, Joanne Fatt, she called me down to Howard and said, can you come down here? Because we want to talk to you.
Wow. You in.
Right.
So I went down and talked to them and they said, look, this essay you did is phenomenal.
Right. Should have been free.
Yeah, they said we're going to accept you into this course, but we don't want nobody to know about your situation. All right. I said, okay. So when I started the course, one of the professors she's a retired judge now, Judge Epps. She's retired, and so she already knew that I knew my stuff. And so when everybody found out that I was already into doing the paralegal stuff, because I started I went to the paralegal course. I graduated in 2014, but I was doing the legal stuff for 2 years prior. And so the Professor Epps asked me to tutor 2 students, right? Wow. I tutored them, they graduated. And when I was finishing up my finals, Judge Epps told me, she said, Mr. Wilson, I want you to stay after class. And so this right here is going to be instrumental as to the business that I started. So she said, look, you know your stuff. She said, you're going to have to start your own business. She said, don't work for a law firm because they're going to use you for what you know. You are advanced in a lot of other paralegals. You have done briefs, you have done motions, you know how to shepherdize, you know how to cite case, you know how to read all the stuff that all the students were trying to learn how to go on Atlantic Reporter. I knew all that stuff already because I had 20 years of experience.
Wow.
So that's when I started my business. I started the Great Injustice Paralegal Consulting Services. I actually registered with the state of Maryland, got an EIN number. I started working on cases now as a paralegal. So I did my research to see if paralegals could do freelance, and we actually can. And so one of the issues I ran into, I did a guy's case, and I went up to the public defender's office in Baltimore, and the guy, he was acting like, I won't say his name, but he was acting like, his attorney, acting like he was on board. Yeah, man, I see you know your stuff. You're doing good. Well, 2 weeks later, I get a letter from Maryland attorney grievance saying that I was practicing law unauthorized.
Oh, wow. Wow.
All right. So then they come say, we need to have proof that you are a paralegal. We need to have proof that you all this stuff they asked me. So I sent it to him. Then about 8 months later, I get a call from an investigator. He said, hey, this is such and such. I need to see you on such and such date. You need to be up in Annapolis at da-da-da. So I went up there. The guy said to me, the investigator, he said, look, he said, no, you did nothing wrong but one thing. And this is what he told me. He said, everything else you did, because I did contracts. So I used to do contracts. So what I did in my contract that he said I had to take out was doing the actual petitions or motions. Only way I could do that, I had to be under the supervision of an attorney. So a paralegal cannot actually file motions on behalf of a defendant or a client unless an attorney has reviewed it and has authorized it to be filed. So he said, look, take that part out of your contract. And he said, you good to go. I said, okay, good to go. Why do another attorney say the same thing? I worked on somebody else's case, got the same thing. I got all the attorney grievance letters. The attorney grievance, I did my response. The attorney grievance said, look, we already talked to Mr. Wilson about this. He said he's not going to do that no more. It's done with, closed out. They closed that one out. So why I bring that up, and I still keep those letters, because I want to show defendants that you have an individual, a man who's been through what you've been through unjustly, out here trying to help you get it, or your freedom, or obtain some justice, as they would say. But the people you say is working for you is trying to knock me down.
Right.
So you think they really for you? If anything, you should be one to work with me, not against me.
Exactly. Not, especially not a technicality, on something. It's so, in situations like these, I kind of look at the big picture. Like, what is the big picture?
Right.
Whose side are you on?
Yeah.
What team are you on? Okay, you didn't cross the T, you didn't dot an I, but, and I think about nurses and doctors, or, certain things that I'm sure a nurse can do everything a doctor does, but under the doctor, they have to sign on. It's their little signature. Yeah. They make all that paper for that signature, but here you are doing the work. Here you are trying to help people. Here you are bringing the change.
Right.
And the one that's turning you in, so to speak, is on a technicality. Now, you can look at it two ways. It's like, why would you do that? But then it's like, thank you. So now I won't get hung up in the future.
Right,
I'm going to go ahead and take that line out, and I'm going to keep on doing business, and I'm going to keep on helping people, because I won't have issues like you anymore. Yes. But that really does bother me, because it's like, I'm trying to help people. I'm on your side, mister, and you are trying to make it hard for me, probably because he was maybe jealous, insecure. It could be a myriad of things, but it's just interesting that, and I know a lot of judges and attorneys are kind of attorneys rather like, man, he do my job better than I do.
You taking their job,
right. So they feel a certain type of way, but that's not the point. The point is you're on the winning. You're on the same team
to help people who are wrongly accused.
So if you're better than me, by all means. I my background is criminal justice. I don't know as much as y'all do, but I started out in the criminal justice field and switched over to special education and teaching. So I worked with children and teaching in the prison system. But I always was fascinated with how these just understanding that aspect of it. So I pick on Kiki's brain a little bit, but I really appreciate you breaking that down, because I hear a lot of people in my area when I go in and mentor and stuff. I hear them talking, but it's not a lot of action. Yeah, we're gonna host a summit. How many parties and summits and events, and I'm sick of them. Sick of them. I've been hearing that for the longest. I did my work in Baltimore County, or Baltimore, technically city, and then did some stuff in Jessup, and then connections to Hagerstown, whatever. But it was just a lot of talking and let's go to City Hall and da-da-da-da-da-da. But what are we doing here?
Right.
So it's so refreshing to see you actually doing stuff,
helping
and
people.
yeah,
like a whole business.
And I'm literally thinking back to, honestly, going back to all the kids I mentor, because the first thing I do is say, what's your ID number? What's your case number? Like every single one of them, because I know that number will connect to them at some point. So I don't care if they probably like in their 20s now, maybe 30s. But I had kids that was like, I'll be honest with you, a 14-year-old. When I say that broke my heart, I was like 14, and they tried him as an adult, just the whole thing, you know. So I really just want to, I don't even know what I really want to say. I just want to grab all these kids up and just give them to you. You know what I mean? Because I'm like, these kids are like, I've seen 3 generations in a prison. And I say that broke my heart. That's grandfather, sad. Father, son. And I'm like, really?
And there's so many innocent people in jail right now.
Exactly.
For crimes that they didn't commit.
That's
and
the part.
Like, we really need people like you to go out there and bring change.
So y'all gonna be upset what I'm about to tell y'all.
Uh-oh.
There's more.
Yes, it's more. So when they have a program that Judge Jeter started called the Court Reentry Program. And so I remember I went to one of the graduations, and Judge Jeter, she came in because she had got appointed to the Court of Special Appeals. So she turned around. I was talking to her. She said, "Did you go back to law school yet?" Because I had went and showed her when I graduated from Howard. I went to show her, and I went into her chamber, showed her. She was so happy. You know, I went to Alana Gale, showed her. I went in her office in the state hotel, and she said, "You're my poster child." That's what she told me. Right?
I love that.
So, and she said, and so I was hearing some of y'all was saying, it made me think about what I told Judge Jeter when she asked me, did I go back to law school to get my degree in law? And I told Judge Jeter, I said, listen, I'm gonna keep my thoughts to myself like that, right? Because I've been working with attorneys now. So this is something that y'all don't know it's coming out now. I did a documentary. I wasn't even going to do I didn't even think about doing a documentary on my story. So there are cases in the state of Maryland now who they were actually exonerated, and now the governor is about to give them millions of dollars, but they don't know I was the investigator in the case that proved their innocence.
Wow.
And so one of the guys who I actually proved his innocence, he's my first documentary. You know, he's home. I think he said they offered him like $1 million. And
wow.
So, and what I was trying to explain to them is that I didn't never do this for recognitions. I never did this to be given accolades. I did this because of what happened to me.
Yes.
I felt like a great injustice occurred to me.
Yeah.
And so that's what my book is. I got a book that's about to come out called The Great Injustice, Business as Usual. So it talks about how those cases I did, where that first guy case I did, well, that's a great injustice, business as usual. Look, they take him in the courtroom, get him to say he understands it, rights when he didn't, and lock him up. Now business as usual. They go to the next case. And so that's what my book is based on, and then a little bit about my story. And so what I found out working on case after case after case is that a lot of times you have prosecutors, not all, but you have prosecutors who turn a blind eye to justice. And they tell you, it's a Supreme Court case, and I think it was Justice Blackburn said that they rather see an innocent man, a guilty man go than an innocent man be put in prison, you know, when there's injustice in the case. And so a couple of friends of mine was like, hey, Tony, you need to do a documentary about your story. And I was like, man, I ain't doing no documentary. I don't care about, but I just want these guys to get out of here. So my retribution was to free as many people as I can.
Yes.
And I remember one day, and they started sending me in the courthouse a lot. So I remember one day, Alana Gale came in the courtroom. She said, you with this case too? I said, yep. So we came out in the hallway, and she asked me, she said, Mr. Wilson, are you bitter? I said, I'm gonna show you how bitter I am by how many people I helped get out of prison.
Exactly. That's amazing. About. You know, that is amazing. Like I'm very inspired. You actually make me want to jump out there and like bring change and help, because
Yes.
there's so many families that's been ripped apart because a father or, you know, a loved one, a brother or sister were wrongly accused and they're spending time in prison, and it's definitely time out for that. So we just want to thank you so much for joining us, for taking time out of your day to share your amazing journey. And I know that it definitely don't stop here. You know, I can't wait to see your documentary. Definitely want to support your books. Just congratulations, and I commend you. We commend you on all of the work you're doing, all the work you've done, and I know you're going to do even more. So thank you so much.
All right, I definitely appreciate y'all having me also.
Thank you
so much. And guys, this wraps up our episode with Mr. Anthony on Truth Talks TV. We look forward to seeing you guys next week. Thank you for tuning in.